We will now continue with the fifth Perek of Pirkei Avot, Perek, the first Mishnah. Mishnah starts, Ba'asara ma'amarot nivra ha'olam. With 10 statements, the world was created. Meaning, if you look in Parshat Bereshit, when it describes that God created the universe, it uses the term Vayomer, and he said that God said something, he communicated 10 times to bring the world into existence. The Mishnah asks a very interesting question. What does this come to teach us? Isn't it possible that God could have created the world with one statement, right? He could have just said, Vayomer, and he could have just said once, create the universe, and the world could have come into existence. Why does he have 10 statements? Ella, rather, this teaches us an interesting point. Lihi para min harishaim, to exact punishment from those who commit evil, sheme'abdin et ha'olam, because they destroy the world, shenivra ba'asara ma'amarot, that was created with 10 sayings. So because it was, there are 10 communications from God, 10 statements, it's as if they went against all 10 rather than just one. So they get a worse punishment. V'litein sachar tov l'tzadikim, and to give a good reward to those who are righteous, who do good things. Shemekaymin et ha'olam shenivra ba'asara ma'amarot, because they uphold the world that was created with 10 statements. So this is the opposite, that because God used 10 statements, they get reward for all 10 rather than just one. That's what the Mishnah means on a simple level. Perhaps we can take a step further, go a little bit deeper here to understand what does this mean, that because there are 10 statements, there's a greater reward, a greater punishment, rather than just one. Why? Just because it's 10, it's more? Perhaps we can say that the idea that God used 10 statements to create the universe is that he was trying to communicate something to us, right? Vayomer, to make a statement, is a communication. A communication means there's something for us to understand. By God using 10 statements, he was basically breaking up creation in a way where it was meant to communicate something to mankind, that we can understand something. Had it only been one statement, so it's true, the world would have been created in a perfect manner and it would be just the same. However, insofar as what it communicates to us, we would be limited. It would be as if it was almost like a magic trick. Poof, the universe came into existence. By God breaking it up into 10 statements, it shows that there's a development and a progression which he's trying to communicate to mankind. Now, of course, it's on a very deep level. Ma'aseh Bereshit, the creation of the universe, Chazal tell us, is one of the most difficult things to understand. But each person on their own level, when they study it, they can still have some type of understanding that they would not have had it only been with one statement. And so perhaps that's what it means. The tzaddikim get a greater reward because that means they have more to understand, more to enrich their relationship with God with, and therefore they'll be able to come away with greater reward. And for those who are evil, commit evil, they have turned away from this opportunity. So it's that much more of an evil, and they're that much more responsible. We now continue with the second Mishnah. Asara dorot me Adam va'ad Noach. There were 10 generations from Adam HaRishon until Noach. Lahodia, to make known, kama erech hapayim lefanav, how much is God's patience, how much patience there is before him, how God is so patient with human beings. Shekol hadarot, for all the generations, hayu machisinu bayin, they were making God angry, and they would continue to do so ad shehevi aleim et mei hamabul, until God brought on them the destruction of the flood, mei hamabul, the waters of the flood. The Mishnah continues, Asara dorot mi Noach van Avraham. There were 10 generations from Noach until Abraham. Lahodia, to make known, kama erech hapayim lefanav, same idea. How patient is God. Shekol hadorot hayu machisin uba'in, for all these generations were making him angry and continued going. Right? They kept on committing evil deeds. At sheba Avraham v'kibel schar kulam, until Avraham Avinu came and he received the reward for all of them. There is a dispute amongst the commentators what exactly this means that he received the reward for all of them. I'll just quote one for you now. One interpretation is that Avraham Avinu had done such good deeds that it was as if he was equal to all of them. He got the reward for all of them, meaning to say that because of his good deeds, the degree to which he went, since he was in such a corrupt society that for generations had been so evil, and yet he was still able to overcome that, to perceive truth and to perceive God and develop such a relationship with him, where he went out and he spread it to others. So it's as if he got the reward for all those generations because he was able to take what they had and what they were missing and overcome that and use it for his own well-being, and in that way keep the world going, keep sustaining the universe. We now continue with the third Mishnah. Asara nisyonot nitnaseh Avraham Avinu alav hashalom. There were 10 tests that Avraham Avinu, peace be upon him, was tested with. Ve'amad bekulam, and he withstood all of them. Lehodia, to make known, kama chibato shel Avraham Avinu alav hashalom. How much is Avraham Avinu's love for God, to make known how much Avraham loved God, how attached he was to God, that he was able to withstand all these tests. I will just mention on the side that the Rambam has an interesting interpretation of what Nisayon means. He explains that Nisayon over here and in the Chumash does not necessarily mean test, but rather it means a demonstration, to demonstrate to others. That these were all things that were done so that others could learn from Avraham Avinu what it means to be a man of truth, somebody who's connected to God in a real way, and how that impacts their life. Certainly that fits with the text of the Mishnah here, lehodia, to make known how much Avraham Avinu loved God. We'll now continue with the fourth Mishnah. Asara nisim na'asu lavotenu b'Mitzrayim v'asara al hayom. 10 miracles were done for our forefathers in Egypt, and 10 on the Yam Suf. Eser makor v'yekadosh baruch hu ala mitzrim b'Mitzrayim ve'eser al hayam. This is another version of the same statement, which means there were 10 plagues that God brought on the Egyptians in Egypt, and 10 on the Yam Suf. Asara nisyonot, there were 10 tests, nisu avotenu, that our forefathers tested et hamakom baruch hu b'midbar, God in the desert. 10 tests that our forefathers, when they were traveling in the Midbar, gave to God. They challenged him 10 times. Shnei Amar, as it says in the Pasuk, Vayinasu oti ze eser pa'amim v'lo shamu b'koli, that they tested me 10 times, they didn't listen to my voice. Perhaps we can say the idea of the Mishnah here, this comparison, right, the juxtaposition of the miracles that God did for us versus the tests that our forefathers, that we gave to God, it brings to mind the idea that is found often throughout Chazal and the Rishonim, which is the limited impact of miracles. That whereas God does miracles for us and they save us, their impact is not long-lasting. And they're not really what a person's belief in God should be based on. And that's drawn out by the fact that after you have these miracles, the Mishnah says that we still challenge God 10 times. And of course, the idea is that God's will is that a human being should develop his relationship with God based on a personal, intimate way of understanding God, and miracles are beyond understanding. So it is not the best approach in developing a relationship with God. Its impact will always be limited.